I think since yesterday we have been talking about a lot of high-class jargon from security, ZTA, then endpoint, cloud, all those things. So I'll try to make it more real and have a discussion from a experience perspective. And what we have noticed during the pandemic that the digital transformation agenda for most of the organization accelerated like never before. And that also gave huge opportunity as well as it created a different kind of challenge from security perspective, because now you have a large surface attack and there were malicious attempts being made somehow to infiltrate the data center, phishing attack and all those increases like never before. So I'll begin with you, Mr. Nandy. Since in IOCL, we know there is a heterogeneity in terms of managing the IT infrastructure. And you have something on-prem, something on the cloud, you're experimenting with the cloud also. What kind of challenge did you face during the pandemic? And what was some of the learning and how are you managing the security dynamics from the heterogeneity perspective, especially in relation to the cloud? If you could share your views.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening to all of you. In fact, we have touched upon a very important point actually. Even before pandemic, there are a lot of business disruptions and business proliferations which go on across the world. And we have been increasingly seeing that automation, the kind of B2B automations and B2B transactions which are going on, more and more digitalization is being done, and pandemic has actually shown us that way, that how, our way of life, doing working life, living life can be completely different. Post-pandemic, we are seeing this bargaining adoption of work from anywhere. In fact, before pandemic itself, we had prepared ourselves from all perspectives because, as you are rightly saying, we are already operating on hybrid and poly-cloud because you have many things on-prem, starting from our ERP, starting from our HDMS CRM, many other solutions which are predominantly meant for our primary customers, that is our business partners as well as security customers like you and me. And we have got a lot of things on the cloud itself. And we have preempted that. And in fact, we have built our business resilience, business continuity plan, disaster recovery centers, and entire landscape of Indian Oil business, unified business solutions are protected through 360-degree protection and defense in depth, having a presence and protection right from perimeter, from data center network to the endpoints, and adhering to all kinds of frameworks in NIST and ISO 27001. What we have seen is that in this bargaining digitalization, since more and more data and applications are moving to cloud and some are residing on-prem, this interface, managing the interface, this becoming very, very vulnerable. And there are a lot of security risks in this. Predominantly, you have seen that for the cloud adoption, there are 3 C's which are very important. One is the configurations. Second is consistency. And third is the cost. As for the configuration is concerned, as we all know that everything in the cloud is a code, right? And whenever anything goes wrong in the configuration, that becomes challenging risk. So misconfiguration is one part. Second is, no ready-made lift and shift from on-prem to cloud. So you have to adapt to the cloud technologies, whether you are making keeping any gap in that is very important. And cost, of course, is not the, should be the factor for choosing a cloud, because cloud we choose for different purpose altogether when you cannot meet the requirement at scale, agility, resilience, all these things. So cost should not be the only factor, because there are also cost of securing our application on the cloud. Second is the consistency, because since there are multiple hostings and multiple right from on-prem to colo to private cloud to hyperscalers, everywhere standards are different. Whether you are managing that's one point. And another is that we, of course, we are increasingly using container pods and microservices for software development. software management and all. But there are also risks in that because these microservices, hub microservices goes wrong. It can affect other applications as well. Then there are risks in, user and endpoint because many a times our endpoints are not that much sanitized because all these gadgets and endpoints, we cannot do that. And many a times the connections which come from there to a corporate network, that might be a suspicious connection as well. Many a times actually, geofencing may not be possible. So that becomes another point. And of course, the data, kind of data we actually take from corporate network and use it in our home PCs, that also many times challenging. So to sum up, there would be 3-4 risks which are very, very important, which you should mitigate. One definitely is that connection risks, because nowadays all things are connected and the world is API, all are API driven. And we have seen kind of SolarWinds kind of things where supply chain attacks have happened. So that is very, very important. Second is, of course, the compliance, because every now and then every country is bringing regulations, and all countries, they are tightening the noose because the concern of the data residency and the data security. And third, of course, comes the PDP, personal data protection, because there are penalty on this and we have to confirm this. There are various other risk compliance we have to do. We have to also see that whether our resources are apt and our compliance are correct or not. So these are some of the risks I think we should touch upon.
Right.
And we are doing that in our company.
No, absolutely. You touched upon some of the very important thing in relation to the cloud management and security, and especially the experience from the pandemic perspective as to how the workload from a work from home actually started increasing. Since you come from a banking background, and we serve, from a compliance perspective, banks are anyway meeting that lot of RBI guideline, and there are a lot of things already in place. Could you share, based on your experience, what have been your learning during the pandemic from the security perspective, and how did you mitigate some of the challenges that you faced?
Sure. Yeah, actually, all of us know banking is a highly regulated industry because of the Reserve Bank of India has come up with many stringent guidelines on banks, especially on security part. So during the pandemic, though banks have very limited scope for work from home, because bank is a public service organization, so branches ought to be open for customers. But the IT part, IT systems and the IT officials can have this facility of work from home. So we have approached that in different ways, like that because all the digital channels should be up 24-hour basis. Only the customer service part, we cannot have this work from home concept. So for IT systems, we had made the approach of different perspective. One is, of course, work from home. But before that, we have given preference for this work from some alternate location also. So that in case of any emergency, the critical staff can go to the alternate location. So we have our own training college and all, with the engineers can stay there without going, no need to go out. They are staying there for maybe months together. So our aim is to ensure that the continuous uptime of the systems. And we have extended this work from home facility also, that also the security of work from home, that is the most important, because normally banks and all, there were no this concept of work from home earlier. Okay, so because this pandemic only we have heard of this work from home, especially for public sector banks, I can say. So for that also we have made arrangements like the VPN access, even though we are not used that much, but we are prepared for that. It's because we have to prepare for any emergency like that, because we cannot stop our business like that. So with even with the biometric facility also to authenticate the staff. So with that also, and luckily without any interruption or without any service break, we could service our customers.
No, you are absolutely right.
Yeah,
And
right.
some of the sector which has some level of integrated platform already in place, they were able to mitigate the challenge on the go. Mr. Sharma, during the pandemic, we also realized one of the biggest challenge was having a great visibility across your IT infrastructure and accordingly mapping your security risk. Would you like to share your views, especially on the assessment part and understanding risk from a different perspective? Because there are large number of people who are accessing your corporate data from home, and that home might not have the enterprise grade level of security that you are able to offer while something is happening on the device offered by you in your corporate data center. If you could share your views.
Sure. During the work from home scenario, we have the most concern on the data leakage area, for which we have implemented DLP in the environment. And this was extended through the two-factor VPN authentication to ensure that all the access which are required for business continuity remain with the business as well as respected users. But one thing is very important, that whenever we validate the data records, we able to find out that how the data tampering has been evaluated, or it can be tried by the external parties. Those threats we have tried to mitigate through our internal controls of data validations and putting certain set of rules on our tool set to validate and find the effectiveness of any impact coming to the business. So the way we explore the technology piece is, one is on the secure access. So for that, we have also built the remote access-based controls, which are role-based. And these are mainly on the basis of all the requirements of multiple functions. So for example, HR will have a HR records access, and that way it was there. So moreover, the InfoEdge is the part of e-commerce industry, and the implementation on the running business is very important. So this is how the things has been managed.
Mr. Sanjeev, if you could add your views, especially on the fact that, as Sir said, and as earlier I mentioned, that visibility becomes very important. And what we have been observing, that organizations are actually trying to use, intelligent threat management system, which are already offered by multiple players. But there also you get a lot of logs, and it becomes really, really difficult to have a better understanding in terms of, there are so much false positive cases that log in itself comes completely obsolete if your processes are not completely aligned. Could you share as to what have been, the cases going up during the pandemic, especially when people started working from home, and the risk profile that organization would have done in the past, has it gone to a different level altogether?
Sure, thanks. But first of all, my fundamental belief is there is no false positive in the world. The logs don't lie, the logs are accurate. The problem is with the detection rule or the machine learning algorithm, whatever. The end product is not what you desired, so we term it false positive. But the tools are not lying, they're telling you exactly what is happening on the ground. So, like with many other tools, so one of the things is how much love and care and nutrition you're giving to those tools to ensure that they give you the output that you desire. And no tool out of the box will work in the context of what we need, right? Second, from a risk perspective, like Amit said and other members also said, things changed from a traditional firewall perimeter kind of an approach. Now the perimeter was every laptop or every device that users were working from home. They were not connecting through your traditional network, but they're going out through their home wireless routers, etc. Right? And yet, if we only look at this, probably we would overinvest in certain areas, because with users sitting at home, my risk boundary is limited to one machine because they're not on my internal network. The risk of lateral movement is that much reduced. Now the question is, all right, what is the risk of one machine getting compromised? Of course, if the user is connected to VPN, I'm not considering that because then they're part of the internal network, right? But typically, most of us we went more SaaS, more cloud, essentially so that users can directly go and access services from the cloud, right? And as a result, again, the attack surface from the entire organization reduced to one computer. And then the detection was, am I able to detect stuff happening on one computer, either based on anomaly, based on whatever rules we could decide? So a lot of traditional SIM rules and a lot of log collection that was taking place when those computers were connected to the enterprise network, that changed, because now how do you get log from somebody who's sitting at home or working? And so a wider EDR kind of a deployment where the telemetry need not flow to my internal network, but can go to some cloud data lake from where they can be pulled down and analyzed, etc. Right? So some of those initiatives, I feel, it's important to take into consideration that the context both from defense, the blue side, as well as the red side, because if we don't know what the attackers are doing, what their motivations are, right, it's really very difficult. I mean, look at last few hacks that has happened in this year itself. The bunch of 18 and 17-year-olds, right, and they're cracking huge companies which probably have all the tools out there in the world, and yet they go undetected, essentially because they know these tools are there. And so what sort of techniques they want to use, either social engineering or stealing something, internal lateral movement, tools are not able to detect those things, right? So again, the risk profile is changing. We need to understand both sides, the attacker side, their motivations, and those guys are doing it for fun. They're not really doing it for profit, right? They dox each other also on social media. I mean, they let each other out. So they're having fun at our cost. And so we need to understand now what they do, what kind of stuff we need to implement to be able to cater for that risk. Just for a quick last example, we all know, and we probably all have implemented multi-factor authentication on our networks, and we trusted them to solve a lot of problems. Microsoft till today claims 99% of all attacks can be stopped if you just turn on MFA. But these guys are just bypassing MFA nowadays, right? And so most of the MFA providers now, they have made changes to the way the MFA push notifications are sent. But how many of us have changed it? So again, understanding those risks, understanding what is available in the market, and then leveraging those. And this is happening on a daily basis. So one of the things I have seen from post-COVID is the pressure to remain at the top of the game, pressure to remain at pace with the attackers. That has increased a lot.
Right. No, you are absolutely right, especially on the fact that, the attackers are able to collaborate with each other quite well. But that intelligence sharing we don't see with different players providing different security solutions. So you might have one of the largest networking company, but all those intelligence is with them. And if you are a customer of them, possibly you have some access. So that is one of the challenge. Now I'll come to you, Mr. Bijender. Earlier, sir said how much love you put into the process that you have, the tech gig that you have in your data center. But there is so much heterogeneity within your IT environment. And then if you look at the DLP level also, the number of agents that are increasing, the policy, the segmentation that you are increasing. I mean, so those things are completely going to a different level altogether. So despite the fact that AI and ML is some level going to automate a lot of things, but we do see there is huge challenge on that. Could you share your views as to how you look at the next generation technology somehow solving some of the pain point of the CISOs down the line?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. So when we talk about threat intelligence, it has mainly four major components. What we talk about, where it's a strategic, it's a technical or tactical, or it's operational. So when you blend it all together, and on top of that, you implement some sort of tools which is well aligned and integrated with AI and ML, that definitely helps, to give you a better visibility and control. Yeah. But nowadays, I mean, again, a lot of challenges we are facing in terms of having multiple tools and technologies we bring. Yeah. One thing, I mean, we all should keep in our mind that no matter what tools and technology you bring, in cybersecurity, tools and technologies has very limited role to play. Yeah, it's more or less like a human psychology. technology has just 2% role to play. 98% it's a human psychology. So you need to have multi-layered approach. One solution doesn't fit to all, in security what we say. Multi-layered approach where one side you strengthen your core infra, your all the tools and technology you bring and you try to make a a wall. And the other side, you also need to think about your end users. We always say that users are our weakest link and also strongest link as well. Yeah. So a lot of awareness needs to be considered. To ensure that your users are well aware that what they are communicating, what data they are accessing, how they are accessing, what controls you have. And on top of that, you need to monitor it and validate it. Normally what happens when we enforce any policy or controls, after some time we just forget it. Yeah. So continuous monitoring is very critical, and we have to keep making our users aware that what are the risks you have, what best practices you should follow. And parallelly, you need to keep strengthening your cybersecurity posture overall. That's my submission on your question.
No, you are right, absolutely, especially from a tech point of view. But the other thing that you mentioned is really important is, I think in a larger perspective, is creating awareness with your own internal employee, your vendor, your partners, customers. But we see a lot of challenge also on the capacity building part. I mean, the kind of resources that you have in terms of managing your security and the way these hackers are actually hacking things, and the security is from ZTA to somebody was talking about ZTNA. I mean, a lot of new things happening. Mr. Navaneethan, would you like to share your views as to how have been your experience during pandemic and some of the challenges that you faced, especially when people were working from home? And if you could share some unique perspective on that.
Yeah, amazing. Very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It was amazing insight from all the leaders. On top of that, it's a couple of experience where really most of the organizations they have gone through, right? From the CISO responsibility, it's not only take care of the respective organization, right? Really, they got into that to protecting the employee home network also. That is the bigger challenges where we had it, because their home network have a lot of challenges, right? I mean, in terms of SSID is known to everyone. The password, who are all coming and delivering, they're also part of their network. So once their system is compromised, then it is absolutely gone, right? Where they can penetrate into our network. See, most of the attack, it started to happen from the supply chain. It's from the the end user computing side. It's not only on the other factor. And second, the key point is what we are looking is, it's like a people process technology. Again, we have bifurcated into the three areas. One is the end user side. What are the things which needs to be taken care? That's the first one. Second one is from organization, application, infrastructure, on the cloud. What are things needs to be taken care? And third one is the major challenges in terms of dynamic, what we had it with a third party vendor. Because most of the application, most of the organizations, what we had, it's like a third-party applications which is completely integrated with the respective organization. Really, we cannot. It's completely coupled. It's very difficult to decouple such a step. So that's why if any consumer data comes from the the end users to the our database, there are many other hops in between. Really, we are not sure who are all consuming our data, and then where our data is in the going flow actually. Right? That's on the bigger challenges. And third point is we had. Bigger challenges from the API and shadow API. I mean, now it's shadow IT is absolutely gone. It is some extent it's coming to the control, but shadow API, right? You may have all the the infrastructures, the control, enforcement inconsistent, but there is a communications between the internal, external. There is a thin line through that. Just completely data is pulling and then pushing across the organization, right? Which is might not have much visibilities. The people may have a WAF, and then people may have this API gateway, but again there are a lot of challenges. Really, if you ask, maybe including me, if you ask just one go, how many APIs you have it in your organization, it's very difficult to tell in one click. It will take a lot of challenges. The second point, how many APIs you have it, how many you are getting the GET request, how many things you are making as a POST request. That's also we are not sure. Third one, like who are the vendor you are associated, and then where and all this, what kind of data is really pulling and then pushing. Really, we don't have much challenges. So that's what it is. Really, from the organization standpoint, what the stand we have taken is we wanted to ensure that a holistic approach. It should not be a standalone only the cybersecurity team or IT team or DevOps team or maybe the functional team, right? Really, just we wanted to ensure that things are taken care from end to end. Even this end user computing also has been taken care with the responsibility of all the folks.
Oh, you are absolutely right, especially if you go to the BFSI CEO and ask them the percentage of work that they are actually spending on managing the API. So large chunk of their effort goes on API management. So this copying and creating new APIs. Now I'll go to Mr. Praful. Since you come from Unique Identification Authority of India, and I know UIDAI is an organization that has given a kind of identity to us. And on that platform, there are a lot of services that we have been able to create, and some of them are one of the fantastic services actually, like UPI, GEM, a lot of other things that, and then there is down the line, we are also thinking something around the e-commerce part, ONDC. So those are completely a new innovation where India is showing a completely a different level of technology adoption for tech for public good. I'm sure during the pandemic, even your organization would have faced, by and large, the similar problem that the PSU faced, the enterprise IT people face. Could you share your experience?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. As we all know that UIDAI provides digital identity to all the residents, including me as well. And during pandemic, I think this identity was used to its maximum. Be it vaccination or PDS or means whatever help was to be extended to the migrant laborers which were in different parts of the country. So there was no other way out than allowing the staff to work from remote locations. And as you have mentioned in the beginning that this remote working has posed two major challenges. One was access control and other was visibility. Since everything was coming through VPN pipelines and everything, so it was not possible to identify that who is generating this application, this request or this process, and who is operating on this. So we could cope up with the situation by increasing the risk surface by introducing jump servers in between and to provide access to the staff who are working remotely. And the strong this password management, the endpoint detection and prevention solutions which we have implemented in the organization to detect, and the of course the DLP instances which were monitored very, very minutely, and action has been taken on that. So that was one part of regarding as far as the access was concerned. And the other thing is that nowadays we are coming across new things like moonlighting. People are working this when they have been given liberty to work from home. Then they are working with multiple organizations. So there are quite likely chances that they can share information of your organization with the other organization who are carving for your database. So that is another challenge. So to me, the security, just like pandemic taught us a lot of personal hygiene. So security is nothing but a digital hygiene. So not only the employees of the organization, but as a user, we all should follow this digital hygiene as well in our day-to-day life. And with this work from home scenario, this previously we used to define it by means of policies, controls, in our organization, but now it has taken some legal angle as well. So this should be looked, means the security should be looked from legal point of view as well, because of all these moonlighting and work from home and multiple access, because the integrity towards the organization has reduced to a great extent. with this new scenario. So,
I would also ask you to add something on the fact that the Aadhaar data is the personal data is the PI data. And as we see a lot of innovation happening in terms of the managing data from a security perspective, do you see some innovation happening within Aadhaar on managing the data that you have, especially in relation to somehow exploring technology like AI and ML to make overall architecture more robust and friendly?
Very good question. Let me tell something about how we are managing the security aspect posture of Aadhaar database. Aadhaar, since we know that it's the biggest database in the world, we are having demographic and biometric details of more than 133 crores of residents of this country. So this data is federated and it is encrypted at rest, in motion and in use. So nowhere you will find plain scripted data in our whole ecosystem. So right now we are undergoing technology transformation. At present we are having bare metal type of networking and conventional perimeter security devices, defense in depth concept, and so many things. Now we are moving towards the private cloud. It's purely captive network, which is in-house installed and maintained by our own team. So we are migrating in that, and as I have mentioned that we are moving towards the private cloud environment. So definitely we are including the security posture of container security postures as well as the cyber security tools are also being inducted in this environment. So this will give the stronger security posture to the existing version of security right now we are having, one thing. And other, since beginning we have yesterday we are hearing about the zero trust network. So zero trust is not a tailor-made coat one can wear and forget about everything. It's more of, it's a very good concept of addressing the security concerns and more of filling up the gaps which we are having in our security system right now. So we are also moving in that direction, and I think in coming 1 year, we'll be having a zero trust type of network.
Absolutely. We are also joined by Mr. Sunder from Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. So I think we all have spoken about the kind of challenges that we faced during pandemic, especially the work from home environment increases, and that put a lot of pressure on security perspective, on device management, your data center management. So, and we also focus on some of the challenges that we are facing from a capacity building perspective, the awareness creation perspective. Could you share, based on your organization experience or your experience, what have been the major learning, some unique thing that you observed during the pandemic?
Sure. Yeah, I think we face some unique challenges because, you know, my organization and of course even the industry, we had lots of branches. I had about 750 offices. And so managing the entire offices in different zones, different regions, different territories was a nightmare because the rules were common. We were an exempted category, being an important service, essential service as we call it. But that rule doesn't pervade everywhere. The territorial restrictions would superimpose that. And therefore, working from home became very important. And then you have another challenge, which is on investments. Investment is a very peculiar function, and you need to be seeing the markets. You need to ensure that the person who deals with the market doesn't indulge in any insider trading. So when you work from home, there should be nobody who's sitting there. The data that they deal with is very, very sensitive, confidential. So what we did was we put some call center operations into place, and the investment functionaries who wanted to work from home used to work from the call center like operation. And then how do you log? How do you listen to the log? Because the mid office, which actually I deal with, has to deal with the logs, analyze the logs, listen to it. And also we are audited by some other auditors. whom we have to show that we have done all that. So keeping these proofs were tough. The other problem was, what are the changes that we need to do in the cybersecurity and cyber audit framework? Which means cybersecurity framework, we did several changes in the remote audit, in the remote access. From a regulatory perspective, there was some 44, 46 controls that were added. This was again an interface between the regulator and industry. We agreed upon 40, 45. I was part of that committee that deals with the regulator. And so those changes were introduced. And of course, changes in the way you allocate things. Sometimes what happens is, in some restrictions, some jurisdictions, you would not be in a position to impose the overarching organization enterprise-wide controls. Then how do you look at compensating controls over there? How do you look at cameras? How do you ensure when somebody accesses remote, there is some camera activity to check he's really there and somebody else is not there and he's not leaking data? What is printed? How do you control data? How do you ensure remote access is not insensitive to regulatory restrictions? So these were the challenges and numerous challenges.
Right. We have a couple of minutes, so I'll go to Mr. Nandy once again. Mr. Nandy, one of the important, the molecule is data. Basically, we all are actually hanging around the data and we are trying to save. Data is at rest, passive, in transition, everywhere. And what we see, as you earlier mentioned about the cloud, the workload is also getting, heterogeneity. In a way, it could be on your on-prem, it could be in cloud, it could be a private cloud or your own cloud. So what are some of the key things based on IOCL experience, if you could share, while managing the security, while you're putting your data into the cloud, if some of the things that we could streamline from a security perspective?
It's an extremely important point because, as we know, whatever name we call it, it's a very important. It's a new oil, it's a new currency, and the code of business. Because data, using the insights, it gives the insights and gives the foresights. And all the business operations, logistics, customer satisfaction, everything is stored there. So a couple of quick points on control on the data, especially in this hybrid cloud where my data is spread across and there's a velocity of movement between these hostings, between on-prem to colo to hyperscaler to my own private cloud. So a couple of quick points. The first point is, of course, the data governance, the strategy. How do you want to see your data to be created, to be modified, to be viewed, to be stored, to be backup, to be shared, to be, go from, because there is a cost of data movement, right? And then there are chances that one data from one source going another that is changing its form or quantum. So this is very, very important, data strategy, making that and building governance around that. Second point is very important is that, as in the cloud, I have already told about configuration. The configuration is very, very important because in cloud, everything is a code. So any misconfiguration will lead to data discrepancies and cybersecurity problem. Third point and very important point is identity and access management and PAM, because whom you are giving the access to, whether for creation, for modification, even for viewing, even for auditing. So this is very, very important. And even if it's not a yes or no, even if you are giving access to that data, how much, which data you give access to, which data you do not give access to. Next point is that least privilege access. That means whatever is required, only on need basis I will give. Next is that whether you have complying, because there are a lot of compliance, okay, like PDP, like any other, time to time government regulations, you have to comply with that. That is very important. Then resources, whether appropriate resources I am giving, because whether appropriate compute, appropriate storage, appropriate applications of everything I am doing that for. So that strict control is required. And lastly, whether I am well managing the data and what data and which kind of purposes I am built onto the data. And if I build I require to build that what kind of business resiliency and data business continuity plan I am keeping on that. So these are some of the quick consideration on the data we are saving, creating and managing, and of course storing it in our side.
we are already late and we have almost exhausted our time, so we will not be taking any further question. But thank you so much for being such a wonderful panelist and sharing your views on the risk profile that we see changing during the pandemic, some of your real life experience that you actually witnessed during the pandemic, and how you mitigated those challenges. Also from a data perspective, I mean, how you can manage our data in cloud and some of the best practices that we can adopt for managing our security posture. So thank you so much once again for being such a wonderful panelist. Thank you.